My plan for this channel kind of got derailed by all the news that went down, which I guess I probably should have foreseen, but I like to plan ahead. I had planned basically every video for the next month on this channel, but the Dame trade, the subsequent like Ayton reaction, Drew reaction, all that stuff ended up taking up a lot of the slots where videos could go. I was originally going to do a power ranking for like 20 teams in the league or so. I made the worst team video, and then everything else was going to follow after that, but I'm probably not going to be able to cut that by the time the season starts, not even probably, definitely. So I'm just going to talk about teams that I'm interested in, and I guess I'll throw out what my power rankings are at the end. So that said, the team that I want to talk about is the Phoenix Suns, because I have some very mixed feelings on the Phoenix Suns. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second. It makes a massive difference on how this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Also, real quick, if you have not checked it out already, I made the playoffs over in my Spurs series, and the first round was quite an eventful one. Luka Doncic put up like 50 points per game against me, so that was an absolute hell to go through. But if you've been following that series, I'd appreciate it if you gave that a watch. And if you haven't been following the series, I'd appreciate it if you did, because I'm really proud of it and I really enjoy it. With that said, I was obviously very critical of the Bradley Beal trade. That's the first thing that stands out. Ever since I was critical of that trade, I do think the Suns have done a pretty good job of putting actual basketball talent around this team. Pretty much done all that you can with the limitations that they had. With that being the case, I do feel better about the Suns and the Bradley Beal trade than I did, but I also do not take back the original take of this is ultimately going to be the thing that shoots them in the foot. Having all that money dedicated to Bradley Beal, having your roster be as redundant as it is, all of that I do think is going to hinder this team from going as far as they possibly could have with a core of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And as interesting as that big three may be, there are some top dogs in the league, even one in their own conference, that I'm just so confident will be better than the Phoenix Suns. That said, let's talk about what they got and what these pieces may look like. The obvious thing, I might title this video this. They're gonna score a shitload of points. That is abundantly clear. That is what this team is designed to do. Bradley Beal was a 30-point per game scorer like 2-3 seasons ago, and now he's the third option on this team. That should tell you all you really need to know. What is the playmaking situation gonna look like on this team? Because it seems like it's kind of like a mishmash. That's what I was trying to say. Boy, that was rough. A mismatch what is the fucking word I'm trying to say? Whatever. A mix of just a bunch of different guys who can make plays, but no one who's particularly like a lead playmaker. Now, I pretty strongly believe that the concept of a lead playmaker is one that is often overrated. You guys all know my true point guard shtick at this point if you've been around long enough. If you don't, I think true point guards are kind of bullshit, especially in terms of a true point guard being your star player. Magic Johnson is literally the only example of a guy who averages double-digit assists in the regular season and won multiple championships doing that. Literally any other time a player has averaged double-digit assists, his team did not win the championship that season, except for one other one, LeBron James in 2020. So literally it takes being one of the top 5 players of all time for that type of system to work. It's bullshit. With that said, there's more of a everybody playmakes type of vibe with the Phoenix Suns, where Bradley Beal was a lead playmaker at a point. There was times where he was essentially the Wizards point guard. You could argue there's a lot of times where he's essentially the Wizards point guard, which can be a little bit for worse, because I don't know that he's a great playmaker. Definitely not like a Zach LaVine type situation where it's just a complete black hole and there's just no vision to his game whatsoever. But, you know, not someone I'd want to be my lead playmaker. And I can kind of say say that about Devin Booker and Kevin Durant too. Devin Booker actually ran some point guard, and Kevin Durant I think is a better passer than some people give him credit for. Others I think give him a little bit too much credit, but you know, everybody has different opinions, I guess. And I think between the three of them, there should be enough playmaking, but there's not going to be like any kind of elite playmaker in any capacity on this team. So it's really going to come down to the mindsets of these three guys where, you know, they need to make sure not to opt to their, you know, more selfish shot creating tendencies, because if what happens every time one of them gets the ball is the other two just watch that player isolate, well, I got bad news for you. That's not going to win you a title for sure. So that's really what's most interesting to me. Are they going to be aware of that, like, kind of trifecta of playmaking? Are they going to fall in line in the way that they need to make that effective? Not sure, obviously. So then let's talk about the players around them. Watanabe is probably going to, if not start, be a very key part of this team. Just having a guy out there who's such an effective three-point shooter that, like, it just makes it impossible to leave him open, and if you do, he'll make you pay. That's a super valuable ability that I don't think a lot of people appreciate properly, is that, like, yeah, obviously having a good shooter is great because it's a good shooter, and being able to hit the three is nice. But the other thing that's super significant is it means that that guy's defender cannot just roam around and do whatever the hell he wants and not double team the likes of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, or Bradley Beal. That's another dynamic about this team, is that, like, double teaming any of these guys individually is going to be a lot more difficult because you have to worry about leaving one of the other excellent scoring options wide open, and they will all make you pay for that, whether it be just a catch and shoot or attacking off of the dribble. One way or the other, you're probably in a bad position if you bring a double team on any of those guys individually. The best case you could have is if you have like a really versatile free roaming defender and the Suns put somebody out there who's kind of offensively inept. Speaking of offense more though, I don't know why I used that transition because we were already talking about offense. Yusuf Nurkic, I do think that as much of a corpse as he can be at times, he still does have moments of looking like a real player, and I would not be surprised if he still ended up being pretty damn solid for them. I still think DeAndre Ayton is a notably better player, but perhaps not the type of player that Phoenix needed. And one thing that really does interest me about Nurkic is his playmaking. He is quite a capable passer, works really well as like a facilitating hub at the top of the key, and I'd be interested to see him and how he works with those three guys, as often the screener, a guy maybe doing a handoff action, whatever it may be, you know, finding someone cutting back door. I don't expect him to be averaging like 5 assists per game, but he can definitely be a good connector. And if you're running with essentially Yuta and Nurkic along with those three other guys, well, I think that could be quite a ridiculously good offense. So, you know, I've said my piece about offense. Let's get to the elephant in the room that exists with the Phoenix Suns, which is defense. I do think there's a chance that the Phoenix Suns are a little bit better at defense than some people would act, because I feel like too often we get hung up on personnel and we act like personnel is the end-all be-all, and it's not. And oftentimes you can have a coach, like for example Frank Vogel, Phoenix's head coach now, who has the defensive wherewithal to take otherwise not great defenders and scheme them into a really good defense. I can say that's definitely the case for Billy Donovan in Chicago, where people have this perception that the Chicago Bulls are an offensive team that can't defend. And that was the criticism when the roster was put together, that they would be an offensive team that can't defend. But that's not the case. That's just not how the Chicago Bulls are, because Billy Donovan managed to take Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan and kind of make them positive defenders, especially Vucevic. So with that said, I do think Frank Vogel's coaching and good enough discipline for this team could result in like the 15th best defense in the league while being a top 3 offense potentially. So yeah, I do think that Phoenix definitely still Beal would ultimately cross the threshold of being considered a contender, because I think you basically have to be at least top 15 in both and like really elite at one side of the floor to really be in that threshold. And I think the defense will be serviceable, but that's in the regular season. And that's not in the context of a postseason where teams are constantly hunting for mismatches. And in the case of the Phoenix Suns, they should have quite a few. And while they might be able to overtake a few teams that don't really have the juice like that, a team like Denver will absolutely decimate them on defense. And in truth, a team like Denver, because Denver is really the team that you have to beat, I think they have a better offense and a way better defense. And I think if you run into, let's just say the Phoenix Suns managed to make it out of the West. If you ran into the Bucks, I think the Bucks have a better offense and a much better defense. If you ran into the Celtics have a much better defense and a similar offense, probably similar-ish tier, probably still top 10, but not quite as good. Those three teams right there, those are the three that like I think are the top dogs in the league, and I just don't think there's any shot that Phoenix beats them. So that's really the way that it is with the Suns, is that they do have a lot of talent, and I do think from a front office perspective, after the Beal trade, they did about as good of a job as they could to round out that roster, but it's just not quite enough. It's just not quite enough, and unfortunately, you have positioned yourself, having traded all your first round picks for Kevin Durant and having filled up all of your cap space with Beal, Booker, and Kevin Durant, you have locked yourself into this roster without really any way to improve it, and it's only going to get worse as Kevin Durant ages. So, unfortunately, I do not see a title in this team's future, but they should be a fun basketball team. They should be a very high-scoring basketball team and definitely entertaining. So they've got that going for them. Anyway, shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.